In this video, we'll talk about the HLPA strategy in order to detect patterns in your data. HLPA, or HLPA, stands for high, low, pattern, and anomaly. Together, we'll identify each of these in the above graph in order for you to understand how to do it on your own. Let's start with H. H is the highest point on the graph. Looking at your graph, you want to find the highest point. In this case, you can see that the blue line, where my cursor is the highest point on the graph. The blue line represents Brassica juncea with copper. In this case, Brassica juncea with copper is the highest point because it shows that over 26 days, it grew to a height of about 10 centimeters. Below, I can then describe the highest point on my graph as Brassica juncea with copper, which grew to a height of 10 centimeters over 26 days. The next thing we'll identify is the low point. The L stands for the lowest point on our graph. Looking at our graph, the low point can be looked here where my cursor is at. The low point is represented by the red line, which the red line over here says that it's Brassica rapa with copper. You can see that at this lowest point on the graph, that over 26 days, Brassica rapa with copper was at a height at about 0. It looks like most likely this plant died. For the lowest point on our graph can be described as Brassica rapa with copper, which grew to a height of 0 centimeters over 26 days. Next, we'll detect the pattern. The pattern in this case is that you want to see what the lines are doing in our line graph. In our line graph, we have 4 different plants that are represented by the different colors. We have a Brassica juncea with copper, a Brassica rapa with copper, we have a control Brassica rapa, and a control Brassica juncea. It looks like on our graph that the pattern is that these lines are all moving towards up. They're moving upwards, whereas this one red line is directly going down. So the pattern that we can detect here is that the blue, yellow, and green lines are increasing over the amount of days in height, whereas Brassica rapa with copper is decreasing in height over the amount of days. We can write that as a pattern by saying all 3 plants, which are our Brassica juncea with copper, Brassica rapa with copper, and control Brassica rapa. Brassica juncea with copper, Brassica rapa with copper, and Brassica rapa control are increasing in height over time, whereas Brassica rapa is decreasing in height over time. The last thing to detect for patterns is an anomaly. Anomaly, or A, is a point on the graph that stands out. Anomalies are often things that look weird on a graph. In this case, our anomaly is this red line. You can see that all three of these lines are moving upward, which means that these plants are increasing in their plant height over time. However, our anomaly is at this point here where this brass carapa with copper suddenly decreases to 0 centimeters over time. Our anomaly, or point on the graph that stands out and is weird, is the brassica rapa with copper suddenly decreases in plant height over time. The point at which it crashes or falls looks like 14 days. The plant height starts to decrease. So we can say this plant's height starts to decrease at 14 days.